Hello, my name is Audrey Charneux, and today we're going to talk about 9 tips to get hired in UX. So this list is obviously not a complete list of all the tips, possible ways to get hired in UX. If you do have a different experience or tips, please leave them in the comments below. I'd be really interested to read them, and that might be also very helpful for other people who are watching this video today. So, tip number 1. Make sure your portfolio is ready. It sounds like a really basic advice, but make sure you have people reviewing it for the content. So from all the way to typography, so make sure there's no typos or grammar mistakes and all that, but also like the general user experience of your portfolio. And I would also even advise, if you can, to pay for a portfolio review of someone maybe that you really like their work or you find inspiring. That may really be worth it in the end. Tip number 2 would be to use LinkedIn. I think there's different ways that you can efficiently use LinkedIn to either get hired or just boost your network, or even just get more information about the UX field. I think it's very important to stay up to date about what are the description of the job description for what you are looking for and what kind of skills that the recruiters are looking for. Number 3 would be networking. And I would say not at a networking event. I mean, if an event is specifically labeled networking, I tend to avoid that. I think from my experience, the most efficient way to network, and I'm not like a super extroverted person really, would be to target what are my interests in UX. So I have a strong interest in UX research, so I try to go to a lot of UX research events, both online, especially now with COVID. Number 4 would be to connect with UX groups. Like I said, it really depends on your interest, but there are a lot of UX design groups. If you are in a larger city, I think that's a little bit easier because there are more offerings. You can look through meetups, you can look online. I'm sure a few of those groups will like pop up. And I will list in the description below some of the groups that I know that are online. My tip number 5 is something that I've talked about before, is to find a niche. If you have a specific interest, like working for entertainment, transportation, like me, healthcare or wellness, and make sure that you use that, because probably if you have an interest in that, maybe you've done some kind of job related to that before, and you can really leverage that knowledge that you have of this environment to present that in your portfolio. Which kind of like segues into my tip number 6, which is if you do have a niche or specific interest, make sure that it's reflected in your portfolio. Something that I've seen that is very interesting in terms of niche as well is people who took a product that they really loved and they redesigned it and put it in their portfolio, like identified based on their research. I found this was a really clever way to illustrate what you can do with an actual product, and also to kind of like target that niche. Tip number 7. I think one of the hardest ways, especially if you live into a big area like me here in LA, or even being in New York or other places where the tech industry is kind of competitive, it feels like, you know, there are so many applicants, especially if you are starting at a junior position. So one of the ways that I found you can kind of get the attention of the recruiters or company that interests you, especially maybe like a smaller or medium-sized company, is to build a page on your portfolio with a specific URL for this company and to personalize your portfolio for them. And granted, that does take more time though, so you need to be really invested or interested in this company. So I found that this was a helpful way for me to maybe get noticed in some ways that if I went through the traditional path of sending a resume, I would not necessarily have people get back to me. Tip number 8 is kind of a time-saving strategy that I've used that I found very helpful, is that a lot of the positions sometimes that we see that are advertised on different employment websites, sometimes it's not necessarily a position that's still available, and then you end up taking a lot of time writing like a perfect motivation letter and a CV, and then you learn that they already found someone. So that's very disappointing, obviously, but also kind of time consuming if you're looking for a job full-time. So I highly recommend, if you find a job that is still posted, to like just drop a line at maybe the info section of their website, or their human resources if it's like a larger department, just to ask them if the position is still available. And what I found interesting about this one is that if it's a smaller company or a medium-sized company and the position is still available, often I've been told, oh, thank you for reaching out, and we'll make sure that to look for your application, or I even got invited to apply directly through this person. So all of a sudden, my resume is not like just on a pile of tons of candidates, like faceless candidates that no one has ever heard of, but there's this person looking out to make sure that your resume is coming through. So that may be a very useful strategy as well. And tip number 9 is something that may be a little bit harder for someone who doesn't have a lot of work experience, but maybe you do have like some kind of volunteering experience, is that if you're just starting out in UX, you can definitely leverage your prior experience. If you've had a career before and you transition to work in UX, which I find is the case for a lot of people, I find that leveraging those skills that you've had into another field, whether it's like very strong communication skills or very strong research skills, very strong visual design, or just like visual skills, it's important to put that forward to demonstrate that those skills that you've learned into another field, they're still very much valuable and relevant for the position maybe that you're applying for. So these were my 9 tips to get hired, that I think helped me get hired in UX. I'd love to know in the comments below if you ever use one of these tips, if you have other tips, but also if you end up using one of these tips and you get hired, please let me know. I really want to know if that worked out for you. And if you are interested into getting more UX content, I do release videos on every Monday and Thursday, so I will see you very soon.